If you're a manager or a business student, you're absolutely swimming in data. But what if I told you that the most valuable, game-changing insights are the ones you can't even see? Well, today, we're going to unlock the power of unsupervised machine learning to find those amazing opportunities that are hiding in plain sight.
You know, every sale, every click, every single interaction, it's a data point. And all together, they're telling you a story about your business. But without the right tools, it's really just noise, isn't it? The big question for any leader is, what incredible opportunities are you missing out on just because you're not listening closely enough?
Okay, so let's get our bearings here. Machine learning really has two main flavors. You've probably heard of supervised learning. That's when you have all this labeled data and you're basically teaching the machine a known outcome. You know, the classic hot dog or not a hot dog example. But for a manager, for a business student, the real gold is often in the unknown. What happens when you don't have the answers ahead of time? That, my friends, is unsupervised learning. Its job isn't to predict, but to discover. It's all about finding those natural customer segments you never even knew existed, giving you a totally new strategic edge. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by really defining this challenge of finding hidden patterns. Then, we'll dive into two core strategies that every manager and student should know: finding groups with clustering, and then finding rules with association mining. And we'll wrap it all up with a simple playbook to help you put these powerful ideas to work right away.
All right, let's jump into our first strategy: finding groups. The main technique here is called clustering, and it's all about letting your data sort itself into natural, similar groups without you having to tell it what the labels are beforehand. To make this really concrete, just imagine for a second you're running a pizza restaurant. You've got tons of data on what people order, how many pizzas, how many toppings. Now you want to launch 3 targeted coupon campaigns, but you know that the old one-size-fits-all approach is just a waste of money. To really get a return, you need to know who gets which coupon. You need to find your natural customer groups first.
And the perfect tool for this job is an algorithm called K-means clustering. Now, don't let the name scare you off. The idea behind it is incredibly simple and intuitive. Let's see how it solves our little pizza problem.
So here's the process, and it's actually really cool. First, we just plot every single customer on a graph based on their ordering habits. Now, since we want 3 groups, the algorithm just randomly drops 3 starting points on the graph. We call these centroids. Then, it simply assigns each customer to whichever centroid is closest, and boom, we have 3 rough groups. From there, it calculates the new center of each group and moves the centroid to that spot. It just keeps doing this: reassign, recalculate over and over until the groups settle down and the centroids stop moving.
And this is where the magic happens. This is where the algorithm delivers real business value. Once it's done, you don't just have some abstract dots on a chart. You have real, actionable insights. Cluster 1 loves a ton of toppings but doesn't order very often. Okay, let's hit them with a buy 3 toppings, get 2 free deal. What about Cluster 2? They order simple pizzas all the time. Perfect. A 20% discount on their favorite will keep them loyal. See, you've just built a data-driven marketing strategy completely from scratch.
Now, K-means isn't the only game in town for finding groups. There's another method called hierarchical clustering. This one is fantastic when you want to understand not just the groups themselves, but the relationships between them. It builds this cool tree-like structure, showing how smaller groups merge into larger ones. Kind of like how terriers and retrievers are their own thing, but they both fall into the bigger category of dogs. Okay, so we've figured out how to group our customers. That's the who. Now let's switch gears to our second strategy and tackle the what. As in, what do these customers actually buy together? We can figure that out by finding hidden rules in their behavior.
I mean, this is the next logical question for any manager, right? It's awesome to know who your customers are, but to really optimize your business, everything from your store layout to your online product recommendations, you absolutely need to know what they tend to buy in the same shopping trip.
The technique for doing this is called market basket analysis, and its goal is super simple: sift through massive amounts of sales data and find which items are frequently bought together. This is the engine that powers Amazon's "customers who bought this also bought" feature. You've seen it a million times. The classic story, and it might just be a legend, but it's a great one, that made this whole technique famous is the beer and diapers tale. A supermarket chain supposedly looked at its data and found that on Friday nights, guys buying diapers were also weirdly likely to grab a 6-pack of beer. So what do? They put the beer display right next to the diapers, and bam, sales of both went up. That's the power of finding these non-obvious connections.
So how do we find these rules without going totally insane sifting through data? Well, the most common engine for this is a really clever algorithm called a priori.
A priori's job is to find simple but powerful if-then rules. Like if a customer buys bread and peanut butter, then they are likely to also buy jelly. But to make sure we're not just chasing ghosts, we measure how strong each rule is. We ask, what's the support? In other words, how often do these items even appear together in the first place? Then, what's the confidence? If they buy the if items, how often do they really buy the then item? And maybe most importantly, what's the lift? This tells us how much more likely the purchase is because of the rule and not just by random chance.
The real genius of the a priori algorithm is just how efficient it is. Instead of checking every possible combination of items in the store, which would be literally impossible, it starts smart. It first finds individual items that are bought a lot. Only then does it use that list to build and test bigger combinations. It's a brilliant way to find that needle in the haystack without having to search the entire farm.
Phew! Okay, so we've covered two incredibly powerful strategies. Now let's bring it all home and pull it together into a clear, actionable playbook that you, as a manager or a business student, can use to start thinking about your own projects.
Let's just put this into a really simple framework. When your goal is to understand the who, things like segmenting your customers for marketing, detecting fraud, or just categorizing documents, K-means clustering is going to be your go-to tool. But when your goal is to understand the what, like powering a recommendation engine, designing your store layout, or creating killer product bundles, that's when association mining is your answer. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are proven, high-impact business strategies.
And that really brings us to the final and I think most important question. These tools are more accessible today than they have ever been. So the real challenge isn't technical anymore. It's strategic. It's about curiosity. So what conversations are happening inside your data right now? And what breakthrough opportunity will you be the one to unlock when you finally start listening?